afternoon, good morning, good evening, scholars, wherever you guys are watching. Today we have a great conversation that I've been wanting to get on the table. And gladly, I'm able to have this conversation with one of the first GMS scholars from the 2000 cohort, Dr. Talia Carroll. She is here, and the topic that we are discussing today is diversity. Diversity is a large part of our everyday lives, and specifically on the campuses that you all are maneuvering. We definitely wanted to have this conversation in light of everything that's going on in the world, and bring this to you today. So without further ado, I want to have Dr. Carroll say a few things before we get started, and then we'll jump right in.
Hi, everybody. I am so grateful. Thank you, Justin, for the invitation. I cannot believe, like, as a part of the inaugural year for the scholarship, that so much time has passed, and I've got 3 degrees under my belt, and
Mhm.
I'm really thinking about all of the good experiences scholars are still having on the university. But thanks for having me. My pronouns are she and her, by the way. So if you all ever want to connect, and I'll share some contact information at the end, I look forward to connecting.
Awesome, awesome. Once again, Dr. Carroll, thank you. I can't wait to hear all of the wisdom that you're about to drop on our scholars. Without further ado, let's go and let's jump in. So I wanted to just start this conversation off pretty broadly, and I wanted to ask you specifically, what does diversity look like? As it relates to, higher education, as it relates to students on a college campus, as it relates to you moving progressing through your career, how is diversity, kind of shaping them? What exactly is it?
That is such a big and important
Hmm.
question. So I have a couple of ways I can answer. So when I think about um, maybe what people are experiencing in their higher education contexts and lived experiences, I think about all the social identities we bring to the table in terms of our race and gender and sexual orientation and socioeconomic status and disability status. Like, all of those things and who we are really add to the diversity of our campuses, and really show up in some really exciting and important ways in our higher education context. So I think about, and I think sometimes when people are talking about and thinking about diversity, it's often tied to numbers. I like to, go beyond that, because we shouldn't just be thought of as numbers on our campus. We should be thought about as, like, all of the unique and wonderful things we bring to the campus to help people learn and engage in very specific ways. So that's one way to think about it. And personally, I'm a military kid. I was in a very interesting situation as a middle schooler, and having the opportunity to live abroad, first in Portugal and then in Singapore for a few years, and graduated high school in Spain. So my perspective and thoughts about diversity are really global. And I so appreciate having had those lived experiences. They help to shape my curiosity and
Hmm.
passion and desire for everyone to feel a level of inclusiveness in their personal and professional spaces. And so, the work I get to do currently in my full-time job um, is really, there's a really deep foundation from my experiences as a young person. And so that's how my diversity background and, like, commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion has definitely been shaped by my lived experiences living abroad. And then coming back home, I live in Oklahoma, so coming back to college after living abroad, I had some very interesting perspectives because I hadn't lived in the States. And so I didn't learn and engage in all things diversity and really understanding it deeply until late undergraduate experience, and then in grad school through all of my graduate school curriculum. And so, yeah, it's a big, broad word, right? And I think there are lots of ways to tackle it, but those are my initial thoughts.
Awesome, awesome. Now, in your everyday, walk within diversity, as your position on campus, how do you go about your everyday as an administrator, you've had your shared experiences growing up, coming through academia, progressing through your career. Now, how do you go about it being the one who has diversity inclusion directly behind your name?
That was a big sigh. I don't know why I sighed like that, but yeah, maybe I should share with folks. I am the vice president for diversity and inclusion at a small private university in Oklahoma, and good gracious, it is such a big and important role. And so I'm thinking about admissions and who's admitted to university. I'm thinking about who's hired and who's retained at the university. I'm
Mm,
thinking about curriculum and who's included in curriculum and who gets to be seen. And so there are so many different levels to the work I get to do and the questions I get to ask and the encouragement I get to offer to a wide range of people. But when I think about students in particular, and perhaps what I think they could be looking for is one, like maybe a human who's like me, who has the title, authority, power to really make change on a campus, and for them to, maybe build relationship with that person to really understand what the institution's goals are, and how they are really thinking strategically about diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice on the campus, and what that means for them. So, like how policies are shaped, how they get to be supported in the classroom. Are there equitable practices that need to be revisited? And if so, do they feel like they have the autonomy to go and have conversations with people to make change? I feel very fortunate. I have some students already I've been able to build relationship with. I've only
awesome.
been in this position for a little bit, and they bring to me very, very real concerns that I get to really think about and figure out how I can use my position and my experience and expertise to make effective change on campus so they feel a deeper sense of belonging and a deep sense of inclusion and safety while they're on campus.
Awesome. And to kind of jump into what you just said, how do you feel, what are your best methods to actually form that relationship where students feel comfortable with coming to you with their thoughts or their whatever's going on with them? How does that relationship transpire?
That's such a good question. I think it depends on the person.
Hmm.
I definitely try to have like very open, warm energy when I'm meeting people, and I think because I'm still navigating the newness of my role, I seek out opportunities to engage in conversation. It's hard because we're in COVID-19 time, so it's not
Okay.
like I in person as much as I would like, but I always welcome anytime I host a session that's online. I always invite people to connect with me. And I have to be really thoughtful about the fact that there's a title in front of behind my name, and that sometimes that presents a barrier, right, that I don't necessarily like. But I always try to tell folks, like, I want to be there for you, I want to hear from you and connect with you, and some students take me up on that. So I would say to build the relationship, though, really just takes reaching out, making a phone call or emailing, depending on the culture of your campus. I do want to say that sometimes there's some layers to get to people. So finding out how to get connected with the person and set up a 15-minute getting to know you where you can share what's going on with you. You can ask some really important questions, share your experience, and then let the person know, like, I would like to stay in touch with you, and offer gratitude, right? People in these kinds of positions have really full schedules, and we don't always get to be as available as we would like, but
Right.
if we're doing our job well, we will always make time for students, and I will move things on my calendar to meet with students. And even if they've reached out to me and I haven't heard back, I follow up and say, like, I'm still here. Do you still need or want to connect? And that kind of stuff really matters. And for students, I want to say, like, please don't let intimidation keep you from reaching out to people. And if for some reason, right, there are some layers, like, find out the people who can get to that person and express, again, your desires, and see where it all goes.
Great. And you mentioned, so also going along with relationships. So I'm a student, I'm on my college campus, and I just don't feel like everything that's moving around me or all the moving parts that are supposed to have keep me successful, make me successful, I don't think they're working in my favor. So as that student, how do I kind of, you know, what should my perspective be about that first? And then, how do I guess, muster up the courage to even kind of reach out? Now, let's say I'm not ready to reach out to you as an administrator, who can I kind of start out and then work my way up the stairs?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, the first thing you brought up was like you're not really feeling like things are really going well. Like
Hmm.
concerned about some things. I will say, universities are complex systems,
Yes.
unfortunately, and so um, even if things are feeling really layered or difficult around you, it doesn't mean that you can't get to a point where they don't feel difficult. And
Okay.
so I'll give you an example of me when I was back in my undergraduate days at the University of Oklahoma. I I thought I was a pretty I thought I was good at like reaching out to people. I thought like, oh, I'm not afraid to reach out or like I'll find my people. But I ended up being that way. I was very shy. I wasn't sure who to talk to. And I ended up reaching out to our trio support services and got connected to a really great advisor who turned mentor and really helped me to navigate my institutional experiences and was there for me in ways I could have never. I mean, I should think I need to thank her on a daily
Right.
basis. I be here where I am without her. But I think just finding those staff and faculty who have articulated to you, I want to be supportive of you, or they encourage you to reach out to them, like do it, right? So finding that one person or two people who have already offered themselves and say, can we schedule a 15-minute chat? I just want to talk about some things I'm experiencing. And again, of course, people are busy, but I imagine that there are folks on your campus who will absolutely want to be supportive. And I will say, Justin, I appreciate that question about like what's happening on a campus. But if you don't have the people on your campus, there are people who work on campuses everywhere.
Right.
I'm that
Exactly.
too, right? So you can find somebody outside of your
Mhm.
institutional experience and say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing on my campus. Can you help me prepare? Can you help me think through what I need to say or the questions I need to ask? And then you can build that up and then go back to your home campus and connect with the people who might be the best supporters for you.
Awesome, awesome. And that's always good to know. Even, of course, for a student who doesn't really feel included or doesn't really feel like those systems are working for them, it would definitely be hard to kind of reach out to somebody who's working within those systems. So that's
Yes.
definitely a good mention to say. You can talk to really anybody. Anybody can have your back. It does. They do not have to be somebody that you see every day or in the classroom, or whether it be an administrator walking across your respective campus. So that's definitely good to know. And I guess I want to kind of ask, in your profession, information is key. You have to kind of always be in the know of what's going on. So if you could talk about how, and this could be specific or just could be a generalization, how do campuses kind of, I guess, gauge, the feeling of diversity on campus, whether it may be like through surveys, whether it may be through kind of shop talks or think tanks or things. So how do you go about kind of understanding your own campus and the makeup of it?
Yeah. So lots of things were going through my mind as you were sharing that. So I think it depends on what specifically you're referencing here. So I don't know that we as universities do a really good job of communicating out
Mm,
how diverse our campuses are. And so when we think about that, people are generally wondering like what is the racial and ethnic makeup of the campus. And so we can always be doing a better job of that, and that isn't the only thing that really makes up how diverse our campuses are. We can think about international students. We can
right.
think about students who identify as LGBTQIA plus. We can think about students who maybe are military affiliated, and there's just so many different ways people can identify that can really present right a diverse campus.
Hmm.
So I personally, right, again, as a new person to campus, want to be able to have people share, what
Right.
their experiences are on campus. So again, are they experiencing in the classroom that faculty are bringing in um, things outside of the canon, right? Things outside of what is normal or typical, right? Like
Hmm.
that's a whole different conversation, right? About norms and what is perceived as okay and right. We could have conversation about policies that maybe have restricted certain populations on our campus from achieving success. So there's so many different ways. I think a lot of campuses go about this through campus climate surveys, but those are usually very big, robust processes. You don't necessarily need to do that regularly. It could be conversation. It could
Hmm.
be, let's sit down in the dining hall and have some
Right.
conversation. And again, right, we're in COVID-19 times, so maybe not the best way to do that. And I know people are feeling Zoom fatigue as well. And so, universities have to be really creative in trying to get that information. I personally try to connect with students at least
Hmm.
once a week. So thinking about students I initially or built relationships with early in the summer, and checking in, like, how are things going? Is there anything I can be doing for you? Is there anything you'd like to tell me that can help me think more strategically about policy shifts or culture? And so that's just me, right, trying to be really intentional about those individual relationships, and making sure that those inform what I do in my work.
Awesome. And that's definitely all. Sometimes, students, they just they want to know what's going on, but they don't know kind of how to kind of ask what's going on. So all of that information right there is key. And to jump back into, how you always say you want to know what's going on. Tell me how you feel. Tell me your story. So for a student who's on campus, I guess if they could sit back, let's say that they're experiencing some things that they want to bring to your attention. First and foremost, we talked about who they can talk to, but even taking that a step back, what questions should they be kind of asking themselves, like as far as, so I feel like this isn't working for me, but do I really know for sure, or is that just me just being realizing that, hey, I'm a person of color at a predominantly white institution. So what questions, or what kind of thought process, possibly, and this is a very general statement, like, but what could they be asking themselves,
Oh, maybe so many things, so many
Hmm.
things
I can
that
imagine.
I can. So maybe a question, a starter question could be like, what are some things I need to feel more included, or to not feel as though I don't have this deep sense of belonging I
Hmm.
want? Like, what
Okay.
are the things specifically? Right? Sometimes we can't pinpoint what it is.
Exactly. Exactly.
So there's
It's just you get that
feel,
feeling, and it's just like that's
yep,
where I'm
yep.
at.
Just feel like something's not right. And
Hmm.
to trust your intuition is absolutely valid too. And so doing those things. So um I might say, like, if I were having a conversation with someone and you were my support person and I was coming to you, Justin, I would say, I just really had an uncomfortable situation in the classroom and it has been really pervasive. And I don't know, like, if it's really something, but I was hoping you could talk through it with, like,
Okay.
here's
Hmm.
the thing I experienced, or here's the thing my faculty member said, or here's the thing my peer said to me. And I just, yeah, like, I don't know what to do with it. Can you help me process about what my experiences have been? Right. And then that gives you the opportunity to share, like, all the things that maybe have come up, and be able to bounce ideas off of someone else. Like, oh, yes, like, what you experienced was a microaggression, or
Mm.
what you experienced was blatant racism. Like, here's a reporting system, or here's
Hmm.
how I want to encourage you to have a conversation with that faculty member or that student, right? And then that person who's in that trusted relationship, i.e. you, could help me as a student really think about some next steps and determine, like, how I can navigate those situations in the future.
And I asked that question, Dr. Carroll, because sometimes so things happen to us, we hear things, we see things, we really don't know if it was right or wrong. We know how we feel about it, but sometimes we just let it go out of sight, out of mind. It's like it happened. I really didn't like it, but I'm not going to pursue it. And I asked that question because sometimes, certain things should be pursued, certain things should be talked about, certain things should be talked through, to allow yourself to actually make that decision. Do I want to kind of take this another step, or do I just want to kind of, it happened, it's over. And I think sometimes, we get caught up in, thinking, should I, without soliciting the help or advice from someone else, that we just drive ourselves crazy sometimes.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, even as right an administrator, there are things I experience on a regular basis
Hmm.
that I'm like that did not feel right. And
Right.
so I
Hmm.
definitely have colleagues who engage in this work and colleagues who do other types of work who I share like this thing happened. Um, can you help me process whether I'm like, is this a thing or is it not? Should I let it go? And I think it leads me to my next thought of it is so exhausting to experience microaggressions, for an example, right? These everyday subtle slights.
Yep.
Every day, like after a while, I imagine some people just don't want to deal, like, oh, this is just how it is, right? You get to a point where you become so numb and
Hmm.
so annoyed, right, too, that you don't want to address it.
Exactly.
And that's really hard. And so like being able to be in the self advocacy space for for yourself to say like that still wasn't okay, and so how can I move forward, and making sure that in that decision you are determining if addressing it is going to be safe for you, right? Like are there any things that could come back that right make a situation more difficult than it would be helpful, right? And getting counsel from someone I think is where I always advise people to go.
Awesome. And then, like, sometimes the hardest thing is asking for help.
Yeah.
We deal with things, and this goes for anybody. Students who are still in undergrad, grad school, med school, professionals. Sometimes the hardest thing is just reaching out, asking for help. Because I think sometimes in my mind, asking for help is harder than the actual situation that's actually transpired. So I just implore everybody who's watching this and listening to be to not be afraid to solicit help. And it could just be, am I thinking about this right? You don't have to expect a right or wrong answer. You can just to make sure, just solicit help to make sure that you're processing, like you said, you're processing things in the correct manner. That's great. That's definitely really great advice. And I kind of wanted to lead into, you talked about microaggressions. We hear microaggressions daily. We hear it on TV. We could hear it in passing. We see it on social media. It may not happen directly to us, but we see these slights and these things, these subtle comments across the board. And I know for a fact that a lot of people deal with this personally. So I wanted to kind of ask, we hear this term allies. So, and across college campuses, you have these individuals who want to side with people of color, who want to, be on the forefront, stand side by side, stand toe to toe. So my question to you, or not really question, but what is your thought process about that? Can we really have allies in this kind of setting, or in this kind of stage that we are? Do allies really know, what they're being an ally for? I should ask. So I just want to kind of get your thoughts and collect your thoughts about
I love the question. I laugh only because I probably had some shifts over time in my perspective
that.
about allyship. So oh goodness. And before I move on, there are tons of really excellent, amazing humans who are doing diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice work. And I imagine we all have varying perspectives
Mhm.
about allies and allyship. So, and just in general, right? Like the things I've shared are my views only, right?
Of
And
course.
we all are so encompassed in our work and are doing it to the best of our ability with the knowledge we have. So I love a good ally. I love I love a good ally. I also have come to recognize that sometimes allies or people who want to be allies are doing the work um, in performative ways. And so, what I mean
Okay.
by that is folks who want to be praised and acknowledged for standing up for communities who might be marginalized. And that's not helpful, right? Like I don't want someone standing alongside, right, the needs of Black women, and
Mm-hmm.
then wanting to, be pat on the back for it. Like that's not why we do it. When I think about allies, though, I think about people who want to do the work on their own first and are not going to those marginalized groups and saying, like, teach me all the things I can do to
Okay.
be better. That's not helpful to me. Now, someone else might have a different perspective and they might be willing to engage in deep conversation about what their needs are and how they can be helping different communities, but it's just not my preference. I do think allies are needed, and when I say that, I think we all hold power and privilege in different ways. And so, if I want to be a good ally, one, I don't know that I'm naming myself as an ally.
Okay.
It's important for me to be named by a person or group as an ally. I want them to be able to see the work I'm doing. I want them to know that I'm doing my own work, that I don't need praise for it, and that I'm really using all the power and privilege and access I have to advance their needs and not for my own selfish goals or benefit.
Awesome. That's good to know. And I kind of asked that question because at the end of the day, as we have plenty of scholars who are on, predominantly white institutions. So, it's hard for them to turn to an ally that looks like them. So I asked that question, just to hear your thoughts about it, and then to give scholars, a sense of understanding of, hey, is this person really an ally? Do they have my best interest at heart, or are they more so serving themselves? So that's the reason I asked that question. I'm grateful for your answer, and I kind of want to jump to a question, a very, very general question, that you'll probably have to think about for a second. But in your diversity and inclusion space, please describe what you do in just simply one word.
Oh,
You're gonna have to think about it for a
you
second.
set me up for that in
A,
one
a
word.
day in, day out, from the time you get to your office, the things that you go through, your calls, your meetings, sum it all up in just one word, the work that you're doing.
Gosh, Justin, that is so
I
hard.
know. And people get me with that, so I'm gonna
Uh,
pass it on.
okay. I'm gonna try to follow your instruction, but I'm gonna follow it up. So the
Okay.
first thing that came to mind was education.
Mhm.
So I do wholeheartedly believe it is my responsibility to help our university community and in general, like in my business as well, to help educate people so they can know better and do better.
Mhm.
So, but attached to that, like I also am well poised to advocate for folks who have not had maybe good advocacy in the past.
Right.
And so, in order to do that too, I need other people doing the work alongside me and who are equally as passionate.
Mhm.
So I try to show up as the best advocate I can be within sometimes the confines of, right, the system and the
Right.
boundaries I have. And so, right, like I'm thinking, like, how can I be better? How can I make experiences better for others?
Awesome. And that's good. I feel like I almost want to say I'm hopeful that there's someone like you on every campus across the country. One who's warm and friendly, one who's open and inviting, that students can feel safe, expressing their needs, going about, their everyday, day in, day out, maneuvering life, so to say, because essentially that's what they're doing. Scholars, yes, this is education. Yes, you're getting you're in your curriculum. Yes, you're getting your degree, but you're still essentially navigating life because once you graduate, then life is right around the corner. So I'm good. That's definitely good to know. And I want to. We've been talking about diversity and inclusion, and we're kind of winding down on this. So I wanted to kind of give you some time to just talk to scholars really quickly. You're an alum. You were in the initial cohort in year 2000. So just talk to scholars real quick from a scholar to scholar perception.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, good gracious. I remember sitting in the ballroom of my alma mater, the University of Oklahoma, hearing about the Gates Millennium Scholars Program. And in my first year, if I hadn't received the scholarship and knew that it was coming, I don't know that I would have been able to continue
Mm,
being a student. And
wow.
so, for all of the scholars out there, because I know we are all so intelligent, really out there doing all kinds of great work. That there are people like me, hopefully many, many people on your campus who desire to support you. And if you don't have those people, please reach out to me. I'm happy to offer support and time when I'm able, and just know that you are the legacy. You are setting the path and setting the course for so many people in your life you don't even know. That people are looking up to you and knowing that you are doing the excellent work. So when things get hard, if they get hard, keep persevering and keep knowing that all of us who come before you, we believe in you. We are excited for you. We know that Gates scholars are out here doing such amazing work. And
Indeed.
want you, right? We want you to be able to share that. And I personally, given I do this work both in my full-time role and have my business as well, um, that if you ever feel you don't have a sense of belonging on your campus, or you have curiosities about how things can be better, try to find those people, try to find a network of people, and they may not all be at your university, but get your crew together. Like, get a crew together. Like, I have my people, and if things happen, I am able to decompress with them and process with them.
Definitely.
And it's so necessary. Otherwise, you keep it in, and that's not good. And seek therapy. I'm a
Amen.
proponent of professional counseling and therapy.
Definitely.
And if you have access and you have the privilege to access those services, I encourage you to do so, because we are in tough times and we have been for a while. And you deserve wellness in all the best ways you can think about your wellness. And I look forward to supporting you in any ways I can, for sure.
Awesome, awesome. So, Dr. Carroll, thank you so much for this conversation. Is that I've been enlightened wholeheartedly. I just appreciate your experience, appreciate the wealth of knowledge that you've given us today, and I definitely look forward to future conversations. It could be diversity, it could be we're just popping in and talking current events. So, with that said, thank you so much, scholars, for tuning in. Wherever you are or whatever time you're watching this, I appreciate it. Good luck, stay focused, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time. Thank you again, guys.